In this video, we are going to look at the way that respiration rate is controlled. So you should be able to predict how your respiratory rate and depth will change under various physiological conditions, and especially pay attention to the role of CO2 and pH in this regulation. So let's start by talking about what respiratory rate is, which is the total number of breaths or respiratory cycles that occur each minute. In adults, it's normal to have about 12 to 18 breaths per minute, but it can vary a little bit. The normal respiratory child is going to decrease from birth to adolescence. So under 1 year of age, normal respiratory rate is somewhere between 30 and 60 breaths per minute. But by the time they are 10 years old, the normal rate is closer to the upper limit of the adult. So it can range from 18 to 30. And then by adolescence, normal respiratory rate is very similar to that of adults. So what controls this rate is going to be related to both mainly neural control from the brain. So the major brain centers involved in pulmonary ventilation are going to be the medulla oblongata and the pontine respiratory group. If we look at the medulla, you were going to see that it is forming a portion of the brainstem, with the pons lying more superior to it. The pons group is going to consist of the pneumotaxic center and the apneustic center, which together form the pontine respiratory group. So the pneumotaxic center is going to inhibit the activity of neurons in the DRG, which we'll talk about in a moment, which allows for the relaxation after inspiration, thus helping to control the overall rate. And the apneustic center is going to stimulate neurons in the DRG, controlling the depth of inspiration, particularly for deep breathing. So together they're going to influence the medulla oblongata. So we can see the pons here, pneumotaxic. It is going to be sending inhibitory signals, while the apneustic center is going to be sending positive signals. So let's go down to the medulla, which is going to be comprised of the dorsal respiratory group and the ventral respiratory group, which together make the medulla respiratory centers. So the dorsal respiratory group is going to integrate input from stretch receptors and chemoreceptors in the periphery with the input that is coming from the ventral respiratory group. The ventral respiratory group is going to generate the breathing rhythm and integrate data coming into the medulla. So stuff comes there, and then it finally goes into the ventral respiratory group to help regulate everything going down. So we'll see here that the dorsal respiratory group is the main receiver for the pontine respiratory group. So together, these are going to help set the basic rhythm of breathing. So ventilation regulation is also going to involve peripheral chemoreceptors. So you have the aortic body and the carotid body. These are going to monitor the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, the partial pressure of oxygen, and the pH of the blood that ultimately will send signals to alter your breathing rate. The brain regions that we talked about, the hypothalamus and the cortical areas of the brain, these are also going to be involved in regulating the breathing rate, with the hypothalamus monitoring more the emotional state and the body temperature, while the cortical areas being what is controlling voluntary breathing. So additional brain areas besides the medullary group and the pontine group. Proprioceptors, these are going to be sending impulses regarding joint and muscle movements, where if you're moving more, that's going to indicate that you need to increase the rate of breathing. And then you have certain reflexes. So you have the pulmonary irritant reflex that affects respiratory zones of the system from foreign material, and the inflation reflex, which is going to prevent your lungs from overinflating. Overall, what we're going to see as far as regulation, these being a very important systematic component, is that increasing CO2 and decreasing the pH, which are going to happen usually simultaneously. These are together going to work to increase the rate and the depth of breathing, where if you have less CO2 and more pH. So keep in mind that this right here is what your body is primarily monitoring that's going to affect your immediate rates of breathing. So hope that was helpful, and that does it for the respiratory lectures.